The unheeded warnings, the Assembly's frustration for 47 years. The Galactic Assembly had sent messages to Earth. 47 years of diplomatic packets, cultural exchange offers, and formal invitations to join the oldest alliance in known space. Every message traveled through the quantum relay network that connected 8,000 civilized worlds across 42 galaxies. Every message was carefully crafted by the Assembly's finest linguists and diplomats. And every single message was met with the same response: polite acknowledgement followed by absolute silence. Councillor Thrace of the Valonian Collective stood before the Grand Assembly chamber, his crystalline form refracting the light of 1,000 viewing screens. He had been assigned to the Earth situation for the past decade, and the frustration in his harmonic voice was evident to all present. They possess quantum drive technology, Thrace announced to the gathered representatives. They have colonized 17 systems in their local cluster. Their mathematical and scientific understanding rivals our greatest minds, yet they refuse to engage with galactic civilization beyond basic acknowledgement of our existence. Ambassador Orcs, a towering insectoid from the Chitara hives, clicked her mandibles in agreement. My intelligence networks report that human vessels avoid all contact with other species. When our patrol ships approach their borders, they simply retreat deeper into their territory. It is unprecedented behavior for a species of their advancement. Perhaps they fear us, suggested Councillor Marn, his gelatinous body pulsing with bioluminescence. Many species require centuries to overcome their xenophobic tendencies. Thrace's form dimmed slightly, the equivalent of a headshake. Our psychological profiles suggest otherwise. Humans are naturally curious, even recklessly so. Their early space exploration showed no fear of the unknown. Something changed after they achieved quantum drive capability. Something made them withdraw. The chamber filled with murmurs and harmonic debates. Across the Assembly, 8,000 species had learned to coexist, share technology, and protect one another. The Galactic Assembly had maintained peace for 12,000 years. They had weathered conflicts, mediated disputes, and integrated countless civilizations. But they had never encountered a species quite like humanity, technologically advanced, clearly aware of galactic civilization, yet completely uninterested in joining it. Let them hide in their corner, Orcs finally declared. We have more pressing matters. The Assembly functions perfectly well without them. Thrace wanted to argue, but he could not. The Assembly did function well. Perhaps humanity's absence was insignificant after all. The coming darkness. 3 months later, the outer colonies began to disappear. It started with the agricultural world of Eston 4, a breadbasket planet that fed 17 neighboring systems. The quantum relay simply went silent. When scout ships arrived, they found nothing. No ruins, no debris, no signs of war or natural disaster. The planet was simply gone, replaced by a sphere of dead matter, stripped of all organic compounds and energy signatures. Within 2 weeks, 4 more worlds went dark. Then 12. Then 30. The Assembly's military command activated emergency protocols. Admiral Kess of the Draconid Empire, a reptilian warrior whose ancestors had unified their home galaxy 8 centuries ago, took command of the defensive fleet. She assembled 2,000 warships at the edge of the affected zone, the largest military mobilization in Assembly history. Whatever is doing this moves faster than our intelligence can track, Kess reported to the emergency council session. We are detecting a gravitational anomaly preceding each attack, but by the time our forces arrive, the devastation is complete. We are fighting an enemy we cannot see, cannot predict, and cannot stop. What are we facing? Thrace asked, his crystalline structure vibrating with fear. Kess pulled up holographic displays showing recovered data from the final moments of Eston 4. The images revealed darkness, a literal wave of shadow that consumed everything it touched. Within the darkness, shapes moved, impossible geometries that hurt to observe even through recorded footage. Our scientists are calling them the Shade Collective, Kess explained. They appear to exist partially outside our dimensional space. Our weapons pass through them. Our shields do nothing. They consume all biological matter and convert it into more of themselves, and they are accelerating toward the core systems where trillions of our citizens live. The council chamber erupted in panic. Representatives demanded solutions, military intervention, evacuation protocols. But Kess had no answers. Her fleet had engaged the Shade Collective at the Terminus Nebula and been obliterated in 4 hours. 2,000 ships reduced to drifting hulks, their crews consumed, their weapons useless. "We need allies," Thrace said quietly, though his voice carried through the chaos. "We need every species, every ship, every mind working on this problem." "Contact everyone," the Supreme Counselor commanded, her ancient voice carrying the weight of 12 millennia of leadership. "Send the distress call on all frequencies, all languages, all channels, including Earth." The silent response. The message that reached Earth was desperate and clear. The Galactic Assembly, which had spent 47 years trying to recruit humanity through diplomacy, now begged for their help. The quantum transmission included all available data on the Shade Collective, tactical analyses, and a simple plea: help us survive. For 3 days, Earth was silent. The Assembly began evacuation protocols. Civilian populations fled toward the galactic core. Military forces established defensive perimeters that everyone knew would fail. Scientists worked frantically to find a weakness in the Shade Collective, something that might slow their advance. Nothing worked. Thrace had stopped sleeping. He watched the holographic displays as another 12 worlds went dark, their billions of inhabitants consumed in hours. He had sent the message to Earth himself, had personally crafted the plea for assistance. He did not expect an answer. Why would the hermits of humanity emerge now, when they had ignored every previous contact? Then the sensors began screaming. A quantum aperture was opening at the edge of assembly space, but it was wrong. Too large, too stable, generating power readings that exceeded anything in the Assembly's database. Thrace rushed to the military command center where Admiral Kess and her staff were staring at their displays in shock. "What is that?" Thrace demanded. "I do not know," Kess admitted, her warrior composure shaken. "The energy signature suggests a quantum gateway, but the scale is impossible. Nothing should be able to generate that much power." The aperture expanded, a tear in spacetime itself, and ships began to emerge. One ship appeared, then 5, then 20, then hundreds. They came in perfect formation, sleek vessels that looked nothing like assembly designs. Angular hulls covered in what appeared to be reactive armor plating. Weapon systems that defied conventional configuration. Propulsion systems that left no exhaust signature. They moved with a precision that made the Assembly's finest pilots look like children learning to fly. The count reached 500, then 700, then past 1,000. 1,200 warships materialized in space, more firepower than the entire Assembly had fielded in the last century. At the formation center hung a massive command carrier, a vessel so large it generated its own gravitational field. Every screen in the assembly chamber displayed the same image: a human male, in a dark uniform, standing on a bridge that hummed with technology the assembly did not recognize. He appeared to be in his 50s, with gray hair and eyes that had seen combat. Behind him, hundreds of crew members worked at stations that glowed with holographic displays. "This is Admiral Marcus Stone of the Terran Defense Initiative," the human said, his voice calm despite the armada behind him. "We received your distress call regarding the Shade Collective. Transmit their last known coordinates. We are engaging immediately." Thrace found his voice, though it came out as a harmonic stutter. "Admiral Stone, we had no knowledge that Earth possessed such a fleet. You never responded to our requests for military assessments or defensive coordination." Marcus Stone's expression did not change. "You asked us to attend diplomatic sessions and trade negotiations. We were occupied with more important matters." "More important?" Counselor Erix appeared on an adjacent screen, her mandibles clicking in confusion and anger. For 47 years, Earth ignored the Assembly. What could possibly justify such isolation? Stone's eyes hardened. "Counselor, 49 years ago, a human exploration vessel discovered a derelict station in the Kepler 442 system. The station was old, built by a civilization that died out approximately 15,000 years ago. Inside, we found records, warnings, evidence of a cyclical threat that consumes galaxies every 12,000 years." The assembly chamber fell silent. "We found records of the Shade Collective," Stone continued. "We learned what they are, how they operate, and when they would return. The timeline suggested they would reach assembly space within 50 years. So we made a choice." "Get what choice?" Thrace whispered. "We chose to prepare instead of talk," Stone said. "Every resource, every innovation, every person on Earth and our colonies dedicated themselves to a single purpose: building a defense against an enemy you did not know was coming. We withdrew from galactic politics because we did not have time for debates and diplomatic protocols. We had a war to prepare for. Admiral Kess stepped forward, her reptilian features showing respect. Admiral Stone, even with your fleet, the Shade Collective has proven nearly invincible. Our weapons cannot harm them. How do you intend to fight what cannot be touched? Stone smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. It was the smile of someone who had spent 47 years preparing for this exact moment. Admiral Kess, your weapons operate in conventional space-time. The Shade Collective exists partially in dimensional layers beneath our reality. You have been shooting at shadows. He gestured to someone off-screen. We built weapons that can reach into those layers. We developed shields that operate across multiple dimensions. We trained our crews for a war against an enemy that does not follow the rules of physics you understand. The holographic display shifted, showing technical specifications that made assembly scientists gasp in shock. Dimensional disruptors, phase variance cannons, quantum entanglement shields, technology that should not exist, certainly not developed in isolation by a single species in less than 5 decades. How? Thrace managed to ask. We cheated, Stone admitted. We found the records of a species that fought the Shade Collective 12,000 years ago. They lost, but they left behind their research, their failures, their theories. We built on their work. We learned from their mistakes. And we did it knowing that if we failed, your assembly and our Earth would burn together. A priority alert interrupted the conversation. The Shade Collective had been detected. A massive wave of darkness consuming another agricultural world just 3 light-years from assembly core space. Stone's expression became cold and focused. All ships, battle formation Gamma 7, dimensional disruptors to full charge. This is what we trained for. Show them why humanity does not attend meetings. The human fleet moved as one, 1,200 ships accelerating toward an enemy that had destroyed everything sent against it. As they disappeared into quantum transit, Thrace realized something that chilled his crystalline core. Earth had not been hiding for 47 years. They had been sharpening their weapons. And now the galaxy would see what humanity became when they had nearly 5 decades to prepare for war. The price of preparation. The Battle of Crimson Threshold. The human fleet emerged from quantum transit at the edge of the Crimson Threshold, a binary star system that housed one of the Assembly's most populated worlds. Below them, the planet Theros was dying. A wave of absolute darkness spread across its surface like ink spilled across paper, consuming cities, forests, oceans, and 13 billion souls who had not been evacuated in time. Admiral Marcus Stone stood on the bridge of the TDI Vigilant, watching the consumption through displays that showed spectrums of light no assembly species had learned to detect. His tactical officer, Commander Sarah Chen, worked at her station with the calm efficiency of someone who had trained for this moment her entire adult life. Dimensional readings confirmed, Chen reported. The Shade Collective is operating across 7 layers of subspace. Primary mass concentration at dimensional frequencies 7.3, secondary clusters at frequencies 2.1 and 9.8. Target the primary mass, Stone commanded. All ships, weapons free. Execute firing pattern Omega. The human fleet opened fire, and the assembly observers watching through long-range sensors witnessed something impossible. The weapons that emerged from human ships were not lasers or kinetic projectiles or plasma charges. They were tears in reality itself, focused rifts that reached into the dimensional layers where the Shade Collective existed, where assembly weapons had passed harmlessly through shadow. The human disruptors connected with solid mass that existed in spaces between spaces. The darkness screamed. It was not a sound that traveled through vacuum or air. It was a psychic shriek that resonated across dimensional boundaries, a cry of pain and shock from entities that had never known vulnerability. The wave of shadow recoiled from Theros, pulling back from the planet's surface as human weapons carved into its substance. Secondary targets acquired, Chen announced. Deploying phase variance missiles, 1,200 ships launched coordinated volleys. The missiles did not travel through normal space. They phased in and out of dimensional layers, tracking the Shade Collective through realities where matter and energy followed different rules. Each impact created cascading explosions that rippled across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Ambassador Orcs watched from the Assembly Command Center, her compound eyes struggling to process what the sensors were showing. "They are hurting it," she whispered in disbelief. The humans are actually damaging the Shade Collective. Thrace stood beside her, his crystalline form pulsing with colors that reflected his emotional turmoil. Hope, fear, awe, and shame all competed within him. How did we miss this? How did a single species working in isolation develop technology so far beyond our understanding? Admiral Kess provided the answer, her voice heavy with military pragmatism. They did not have committees to convince. They did not have 8,000 species arguing about resource allocation and ethical implications. They had unity of purpose and 47 years to pursue it without interference. On the Vigilance Bridge, Stone watched the tactical displays with the intense focus of a predator. The Shade Collective was adapting, shifting its dimensional frequencies to avoid the human weapons. It was learning, and it was learning fast. They are changing their resonance patterns, Chen warned. Our targeting systems are compensating, but they are evolving their defenses in real time. Expected behavior, Stone replied calmly. All ships activate dimensional anchors. Lock them into our reality. The human fleet deployed a weapon the Assembly had not seen yet. Each ship projected a field that stabilized dimensional boundaries, forcing the Shade Collective to fully manifest in conventional space-time. The shadows became solid, revealing the true horror of what they were. The Shade Collective was not a fleet of ships or a swarm of creatures. It was a single massive organism that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously, a cancer that consumed realities. Its true form was incomprehensible. Geometries that hurt to observe, angles that existed in dimensions human eyes were not meant to perceive. But the dimensional anchors forced it into shapes that could be seen, targeted, and destroyed. Fire everything, Stone commanded. The human fleet unleashed devastation. Dimensional disruptors tore through shadow flesh. Phase variance cannons vaporized matter that should not exist in conventional space. Quantum entanglement bombs created cascading failures across the creature's distributed consciousness. For the first time since the Shade Collective had entered assembly space, it was truly hurt, but it fought back. Tendrils of darkness lashed out at the human ships, moving at speeds that defied physics. The vigilant shields absorbed impacts that would have vaporized assembly vessels, but Stone could see the power readings dropping. The shields were holding, but they would not hold forever. We have casualties, Chen reported, her voice tight. The destroyer Halifax is down. The cruiser Defiant has lost dimensional coherence. We are losing ships, sir. Stone's jaw tightened. Every ship lost represented hundreds of lives. People who had trained alongside him for decades. People who knew this day was coming and had volunteered anyway. Maintain formation. We do not retreat. 3 more human ships fell to the Shade Collective's counterattack, their hulls torn apart by forces that operated outside the laws of thermodynamics. But for every human ship destroyed, the fleet inflicted damage that the Shade Collective could not regenerate fast enough to replace. The primary mass is fragmenting, Chen announced with barely contained excitement. We are winning. Stone did not share her optimism. He had studied the ancient records too carefully. No. We are forcing it to reveal its true nature. Scan for dimensional rifts. It is calling for reinforcements. Chen's fingers flew across her console and then her face went pale. Admiral, detecting massive quantum distortions across the entire sector. Multiple apertures opening. They are not reinforcements, sir. This was not the main force. Stone closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of truth settle on his shoulders. How many? 17 additional Shade Collective masses, each one approximately the same size as what we are currently engaging. Chen's voice shook. Sir, this is an invasion force. They sent scouts first to test galactic defenses. The assembly channels exploded with panic. Representatives who had been celebrating humanity's success now faced the reality that 18 planet-consuming horrors were converging on their core systems simultaneously. The truth revealed Stone opened a communication channel to the entire assembly. His face appeared on every screen across 8,000 worlds, and for the first time the assembled species saw true fear in human eyes. This is Admiral Stone. You need to understand what you are facing. The civilization that left the records we discovered, the species that fought the Shade Collective 12,000 years ago, they called themselves the Architects. They were more advanced than you can imagine. They had technology that made your assembly look like children playing with stone tools. They had colonized 40 galaxies and existed for 300,000 years. He pulled up holographic records, images of impossible cities and beings of pure energy. The architects fought the Shade Collective for 2,000 years. They threw every resource, every innovation, every advantage they possessed into that war, and they lost. The Shade Collective consumed their civilization so completely that only one research station remained to warn future species. Thrace felt his structure dimming with despair. Then what hope do we have? If beings so advanced could not defeat them, how can we? Stone's expression hardened. The architects lost because they fought alone. Each galaxy they controlled operated independently. By the time they unified their defenses, it was too late. The Shade Collective had divided and conquered them piece by piece. He leaned forward, and his voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. But Earth learned from their mistake. We spent 47 years preparing not just weapons, but a strategy. A plan that requires sacrifice. A plan that requires all of us. Admiral Kess stepped forward on her command ship. What kind of plan, Admiral Stone? The Shade Collective exists across multiple dimensions, but it is still fundamentally connected. Every fragment you see is part of a larger whole, a distributed consciousness that extends across reality itself. The architects tried to fight the fragments and failed. We need to strike at the source. Stone brought up a holographic map showing dimensional layers and quantum coordinates. Our scientists discovered that the Shade Collective originates from a dimensional anchor point, a location in subspace where their primary consciousness resides. If we can reach that anchor point and destroy it, every fragment across all dimensions will collapse simultaneously. How do we reach something that exists in a dimension we cannot access? Counselor Marn asked, his gelatinous form pulsing with confusion. We built a weapon, Stone said simply. For 47 years, while you sent us invitations to diplomatic meetings, Earth was constructing the largest dimensional bomb in history. A device capable of collapsing an entire subspace layer, creating a cascading failure that will destroy the Shade Collective's anchor point and everything connected to it. The implications hit the assembly like a shockwave. Erix's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. Such a weapon would be catastrophic. Collapsing a dimensional layer could destabilize reality itself. Yes, Stone agreed without hesitation. The detonation will create a quantum shockwave that will propagate across multiple dimensions. It will destroy the Shade Collective completely. It will also destroy every ship within 50 light-years of the detonation point. Silence filled every channel. The terrible math was obvious. To deploy such a weapon meant sending ships into position knowing they would not return. We need time to evacuate, Thrace protested. Surely there is another way. Stone shook his head. The Shade Collective is adapting to our weapons. In 6 hours, maybe less, they will develop defenses we cannot overcome. The dimensional bomb must be deployed now, while we can still create a corridor to the anchor point. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was gentle. The Vigilant and 600 ships will carry the weapon to the target coordinates. The remaining 600 ships will hold the line here, buying time for assembly forces to evacuate and establish new defensive perimeters. You are talking about a suicide mission, Admiral Kess said, her warrior instincts recognizing the sacrifice being proposed. Yes, Stone confirmed. Every member of my crew volunteered for this. We trained knowing this day would come. We accepted that stopping the Shade Collective would require sacrifice. Commander Chen appeared beside Stone on the display. The people of Earth spent 47 years preparing for war, while the rest of the galaxy pursued peace. We built these ships knowing many of us would die in them. We trained for combat knowing the first engagement might be our last. We are ready. Thrace felt emotions he did not have words for. These humans, these hermits who had ignored every diplomatic overture, had spent half a century preparing to die for species they had never met. Why, he asked, his harmonic voice breaking. Why would you sacrifice so much for an assembly that meant nothing to you? Stone's answer was simple and devastating, because the architect's final message said that the Shade Collective does not stop. They consume everything. If we let them destroy the assembly, they would reach Earth eventually. Our choice was not whether to fight, but when. We chose to fight here now alongside allies rather than alone and unprepared in our own territory. He turned to his crew, then back to the assembly. In 30 minutes, the Vigilant and her escort fleet will begin the transit to the anchor point. The weapon requires a 3-hour charging sequence, during which we will be completely vulnerable. We need the assembly's remaining forces to hold the Shade Collective fragments in this sector, preventing them from detecting and stopping our approach. Admiral Kess straightened to attention. a gesture of respect that transcended species. The assembly fleet will hold the line, Admiral Stone, you have my word. Across 8,000 worlds, military commanders echoed her commitment. Ships that had been preparing to evacuate instead moved into defensive positions. Species that had never fought together in all of galactic history united under a single purpose. Stone nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement and gratitude. Commander Chen, begin the charging sequence. All ships, prepare for dimensional transit. As the Vigilant and 600 human vessels began to phase out of normal space, Thrace sent a final message to Stone. Admiral, if you survive this, Earth will have more than a seat on the assembly. Humanity will be honored for as long as civilization endures. Stone's smile was sad and knowing. Counselor Thrace, we will not survive this. The dimensional collapse will consume everything within its radius. But tell your people that Earth did not ignore the assembly out of arrogance or fear. We were silent because we were too busy ensuring you would have a future to argue about trade regulations and diplomatic protocols. The communication ended. The Vigilant and her fleet vanished into subspace, carrying a weapon that would save trillions and kill thousands. The price of victory. 3 hours and 17 minutes later, sensors across the galaxy detected a quantum shockwave of unprecedented magnitude. The dimensional bomb had detonated at the Shade Collective's anchor point, and the effect was immediate and total. Every fragment of the Shade Collective, every tendril of darkness consuming assembly worlds, every shadow spreading across space collapsed simultaneously. They did not die slowly or retreat in defeat. They simply ceased to exist, erased across every dimension they had occupied. Theros, the planet that had been half consumed when the humans arrived, was suddenly free. The darkness lifted like a nightmare interrupted by dawn. Across 42 galaxies, worlds that had been minutes from total consumption found themselves saved. But at the center of the detonation, where the Vigilant had positioned the weapon, there was nothing. No debris, no energy signatures, no trace that 600 ships and 60,000 human souls had ever existed. The dimensional collapse had been so complete that it erased them from reality itself. Thrace stood in the assembly chamber, surrounded by representatives from 8,000 species, all of them silent in the face of absolute sacrifice. On the main display, Admiral Kess read the names of every ship, every captain, every crew member who had died to ensure galactic survival. It took 4 hours to read them all. When she finished, the Supreme Counselor rose from her seat. Her ancient voice, which had guided the assembly for 12,000 years, cracked with emotion. Let it be recorded that on this day, humanity proved themselves the finest allies any species could ask for. They came when called. They fought when needed. They sacrificed everything when required. From this moment forward, Earth will hold a permanent seat on the Assembly Council with full authority and honors. With respect, Supreme Counselor, a new voice interrupted. The display shifted to show the remaining human fleet, 600 ships now commanded by Captain James Rodriguez, who had been Stone's second in command. Admiral Stone's final orders were explicit. Earth does not want a seat on your council. We want partnership. Real cooperation between equals, not bureaucratic hierarchy. Rodriguez's expression was hard with grief but determined. The Shade Collective is defeated, but the galaxy remains dangerous. Earth has 300 more ships under construction, new defensive technologies in development, and a population that now understands the cost of isolation. We will share our dimensional weapons technology with any species willing to help maintain galactic security. We will train joint military forces. We will stand beside you against whatever threats emerge. He paused, and when he continued, his voice carried the weight of Stone's legacy. But we will never again sit through committee meetings while danger approaches. We will never prioritize politics over preparation. If you want Earth's alliance, you must accept that we learned a different lesson from the Architect's failure. Unity is not achieved through councils and treaties. It is forged through shared sacrifice and common purpose. Thrace found himself harmonizing an agreement, a gesture that rippled through the chamber. Then let us build that unity, Captain Rodriguez. Let us ensure that Admiral Stone and 60,000 humans did not die in vain. Epilogue. The Silent Vigil. 47 years after Earth's first contact with the Galactic Assembly, a memorial was completed in orbit around Theros. It consisted of 600 crystalline structures, each one containing the recorded consciousness patterns of a human ship that had been lost in the dimensional collapse. They could not be recovered or resurrected, but their memories, their personalities, their final thoughts had been preserved in quantum storage before the weapon detonated. Thrace visited the memorial every year, speaking with the echo of Admiral Marcus Stone that existed within the crystal structures. It was not truly Stone, merely a recording of his personality uploaded before the Vigilant's final mission. But it was enough. "You asked why Earth stayed silent for so long," Thrace said to the memorial crystal that bore Stone's name. "I understand now. You were building something the Assembly never had. Absolute certainty that when danger came, you would be ready. You did not trust our politics to save you, so you saved yourselves. And in doing so, you saved all of us." The crystal pulsed with stored data, and Stone's recorded voice responded with words he had programmed before his death. "The Assembly spent 12,000 years talking about peace. Earth spent 47 years preparing for war. Both approaches have value, Counselor. But when the darkness comes, when the universe sends threats that do not negotiate or compromise, someone must be ready to stand in the fire. And that someone was you." Thrace said softly. "That someone was humanity." The recording corrected. "Every person on Earth and our colonies accepted the sacrifice. We built fewer cities so we could build more ships. We postponed exploration so we could research dimensional physics. We chose military readiness over diplomatic recognition. We paid the price of preparation so you would not have to pay the price of defeat." Thrace placed one crystalline appendage against the memorial. "The galaxy remembers Admiral Stone. Every species, every world, every child born in the peace you purchased with your life knows the story. Earth ignored every summit, skipped every meeting, refused every invitation. And then when the darkness came, you arrived with 1,000 warships and the will to use them." The memorial's light pulsed once more. A final message from a man who had been dust for decades. "Tell them we would do it again. Tell them that humanity's greatest strength is not our weapons or our technology. It is our understanding that some things are worth dying for. And all things worth living for are worth defending." As Thrace departed the memorial, he passed thousands of visitors from hundreds of species, all of them paying respects to the humans who had saved them. The Assembly had survived, galactic civilization had endured, and peace had returned. But now, when diplomatic sessions ran long and debates became heated, there was always a moment when someone would look at the empty seats reserved for Earth's representatives and remember. Remember that while 8,000 species had been talking, one species had been preparing. Remember that silence was not always weakness. Remember that sometimes the greatest allies were those who said nothing until the moment words became meaningless and only action remained. Earth had ignored every summit. And then they had arrived with 1,000 warships and 60,000 souls willing to become memories in service of a future they would never see. The galaxy would never forget.